Lovely introduction, and welcome, guys. I wish I could come down there and join you in San Francisco. I love coming down there, and unfortunately there wasn't, the budget for the first class ticket and everything. So I'm going to do this from Seattle, and actually it's really nice in Seattle. So I would have been bummed if I came down and missed the weather here. So I am going to, keep this short, around 15 minutes. My usual speaking time on this subject when I'm doing trainings is like anywhere from 3.5 hours to a full day, so it's going to be a little tough for me to kind of squeeze things into this time slot here, but I will see what I can do and hopefully deliver some value to you guys tonight. And so the topic that I've kind of put together is really about landing the plane and demystifying motion in the context of UX design. And when I talk to people about motion in UX, a lot of the time what I'm dealing with in the conversation are that people really have no real context, right? They're just kind of they're like, they want to do motion, they're excited, they've seen cool stuff online, maybe on Dribble, and they're like, yeah, but they don't understand like what it means or how it's really used in the design process. So I'd like to talk about that tonight. I'm going to start off and just talk about me briefly. I'm going to discuss who's using motion and who's not, and just distinguishing a few things as well. And then we're going to jump into a case study that I did and some tools and how you can learn more. And that'll be it for tonight. So real quick about me, I've worked as a consultant for about 15 years. I've got to work on some of these companies here. Not sure if you guys can read that. I'm just zooming in a little bit. And along the way, I've got to work on pretty much everything from motion graphics and commercials to actual prototyping, actual apps, software, websites. Pretty much everything I've worked on at various levels. And so I've got to see the full spectrum of how motion and prototyping comes into the design process. And at the same time, and for the last 2 years, I've been working as just sharing what I've learned, the process, with other UX designers. And so I got to work with folks from Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Nordstrom, Airbnb, Dropbox, like IDEO, and also with that online training, I've got to work with designers in over 50 countries, which is kind of cool. I never thought that would happen, but that's part of what I do now in addition to my consulting work. So that's just a little bit about me. I do have a reel online. I can't show it right now, unfortunately, because the bandwidth limitation is just not going to play very well, but I will post a link so you guys can check that out later. Just suffice to say, it's got some pretty cool stuff on it. Like, I have done this for a little bit, so I know it's kind of a tricky thing to just kind of say that, but other people tell me it's cool, so that's kind of cool. All right, so let's just jump into quickly who's using motion, because this is just want to really be on the same page conceptually with how we're approaching this topic. So what I've observed from experience here is really kind of like 3 categories. We have your consultancies, places like IDEO and Frog that I've worked with. We're really tasked with envisioning the future and creating next generation user experiences. And as well, I've been working with internal teams like the folks at Dropbox and elsewhere. And I just met with a geocaching team up here in Seattle, really, really cool guys. And so there are teams who are often kind of playing pixel police with their developers, where they have a vision for how they want things to go. And they're really just looking to streamline the communication between their deliverables to their developers so that they can, all work together to create cool stuff. And it's, you can imagine the difficult conversations when you ask your, developer if you would just, make it cool and not make it lame. It really doesn't move the needle very far in the conversation. So it's helpful to have these tools to get synced up. And then finally, just the lone wolves, the people who are developing their own apps or websites, or maybe they're just have their own business. There are those folks as well. So tonight, I'm not sure kind of what the breakdown is in terms of the spread of who's who here tonight, but that's just what I've observed working, training folks over the last few years. Okay, cool. So moving on to just kind of clarifying what we mean by motion and how it shows up. So one of the ways I think about it is a sort of a this is my term, post-user input versus direct manipulation. Now what that looks like, let's see if I can get this guy to work here, just bear with me for 1 second while I do this. Stand by for 1 second. I'm just going to try and bring up my phone here so I can demo this. Okay, great. So I'm not sure how the frame rate's going to be here at all, but we're just going to try and make this work. So we have post-user input motion. So when I think about this, I think about something, kind of like when you're transitioning between apps, right? Like say you're in your calendar, and hey, there's my SF meetup presentation. Awesome, that's you guys. And I transition out. There's a post-user input that happens. It's an actual transition that's been built and designed, by the designers and created by the dev team to fulfill an action. And that can show up, as a transition. And then you also have behavioral models, right? Like if we look at something like Clear, where users actually manipulating something in real time, and that's a different kind of thing that's happening. And both of these are, extremely useful, and they're really sort of different categories of how motion gets implemented, whether it's in the design practice as a tool or whether it's something that the user is actually experiencing themselves. So when we analyze motion, I'm just going to jump in here now and really kind of talk about how motion got used on a project that I worked on last year. And this was helping them, see here, go through motion. So I'm just going to pull up some movies here. And I apologize if the refresh rate is just really, really bad up here at Seattle. And it's just, it is what it is. But so what I'm going to show you here is, I'm just going to play this out real quick, and we're going to start with looking at, so this, I want to give you guys a couple different tools for how to look at motion as a whole when you're putting it into practice. So 3 things that I look at that are just extremely important every single time are velocity curves, timing, and continuity and context. So I'm just going to play this back right here. So one of the things that designers are kind of, one of the things they're not expecting to learn a whole lot is this concept of velocity curves and motion. And the way I think about it, there's this great tool online that you can check out. It's like easings.net. It's just an awesome, awesome tool to just start getting your head wrapped around how velocity curves impact motion and impact the user experience. And so you can really start to just roll over here and play with these, and if you click, you get the code, and it really kind of shows you what's happening like under the hood. So this is a great tool. So, I've got a buddy who, his name's Eric, and he's designed all the motion for Windows 8 and Zune, and the guy is he's just a master motion designer on these projects. And I asked him when I was putting my training together, I was like, dude, Eric, what should I be showing people? And he was like, dude, velocity curves, man. Like, got to make sure they understand velocity curves. Velocity curves are really the whole foundation of what gives motion its great feeling. So when I play this back, you'll just notice that things ease in, right? It kind of coasts in. And this is something that you just really want to start noticing in your projects, in your apps, and just in all of the things that you see that have motion. You start paying attention to like how it's, starts off slow, and then it can speed up, and then maybe like end slow. A great example that I've noticed across the board was on like iOS. Actually, when you went from an app to your home screen, there's a velocity curve, right? It starts up slow, it speeds up. and then it coasts in again. And I noticed, like, it was like a couple updates ago, they tightened their velocity curve. The impact of the user experience was that it went from feeling kind of mushy and soft and almost sort of like a lag in response time, something that was actually crisp and high performing. And that's how much of an impact your velocity curves can make. That's just really, really cool. So then another thing, and it really creates the field. It's the one factor involved in time that really creates how the feeling of whether this is a crisp experience or like whether there's like a little bit of coasting at the end. It's just something you can start thinking about and working with. Now, in terms of timing, there are two factors here that I want you to start thinking about. One is just the start to stop timing. And this will also influence the crispness of how responsive things feel. So on a transition, say, if the time from start to stop is too long, it's going to just start to feel really slow and mushy, and people aren't going to like it. So a common mistake people will make is they'll have a bunch of animation happening, which means they want to give it more time, and they prioritize the animation over the fundamentals of the user experience and the usability, such that impact eventually is that you're just waiting. You're just waiting for this transition to happen, and all you want to do is get your task going, and that's really what you want. So you want things to feel really, really crisp and just fast. So if I play this real quick, this was something that we created with the like Airbnb team, and we wanted, you know, just this experience to like feel nice and get the timing right. But one of the things here is it's just crisp, right? It happens, it pops in, there's no lag time or anything weird like that. And it's just like, boom, it's there, and it's happening. And then another thing you can start to look at too is when you offset and stagger your like animations, you can actually visually create priorities. So in this last example here, you'll notice that the close button is actually offset. This guy down here. It's actually offset by a couple frames, and it has the effect of drawing the eye towards it and calling it out, so we can actually see that this is something that is important. And so just by offsetting the timing a hair, you're calling something out and saying, you know, this actually has value here. And then there are like other things as well, which is just getting the timing of the events right. So in the instance of when you're like thinking about developing transitions from task to task or from screen to screen, you really want to be thinking synergistically about these screens as sort of scenes and how you're transitioning from one to the next. So you'll notice the background here, it's full and bright, and then it you know, kind of screens back, gets darker and it gets blurry. But that actually is done, that transition from being at full 100 to dark and blurry, that's actually complete right about here, about halfway through. If it went longer, it would start to feel laggy. And I know this is kind of a qualitative thing, but when you're synergistically thinking about building these scenes on or off, that's something you want to be really thinking about. It's not necessarily matching the timing, but what really feels best as a whole. Thirdly, I just want to talk about continuity and context. This is such an important thing, and this is really where I think the value of motion really comes into play, right? So in this example here, when we're at this screen and we transition here, the motion was providing the continuity and context so that we see this new navigational system come on here, and we can also have a clue as to where we were. And this really, you know, fundamentally speaks to how the brain learns, right? When you just go from, you know, one screen to the next without transition, or one task to the next without transition, you're not giving the brain the opportunity to learn spatially and at a depth that you can really take advantage of. And so that's where I think motion can really be used as a powerful way to keep the user engaged and to just create a spatial consciousness and awareness inside of the user experience. So those are just like three things that really sort of add value, and I just want you to start thinking about as you start putting motion into your project. So in terms of like getting in the game and tools, you know, you've probably heard of these already, but I'll just cover them again. So for creating like interactive prototypes, you know, you have things like Framer, Proto, Pixate, Sketch, Axure, Envision, and honestly, there seems like new ones coming out like every week. Like people are thinking about this, people are solving this problem. It's a really, really cool thing. Now the reason I like using After Effects, and that's what I teach, because with these other tools, yes, you can create a fully like interactive experience. What I like about After Effects is that with After Effects, I actually have the ability to create anything I want. So I can think of things that don't exist yet, for instance, and test those out and test those with people, and I can share that with other designers or clients or stakeholders. And that's why it's such a powerful tool for me, is because I like thinking outside of the box. So if you're working on projects that are just like very simple, like swipe based and tap and just not too complex, definitely think about using these up here, because these are just really plug and play. But if you're thinking about something that maybe is a little more complicated or has like 3D, for instance, and maybe like light or some shading, or just you just want to be able to dial in at a level of precision that's not available with the like other platforms here. I think it's a great tool, and I love working with folks who like using this tool, just because like it means that we're all just, we're just working on crazy stuff, right? And that's really what I'm passionate about. It's really pushing that conversation forward. So to learn more about that, you can go to my website, UXinMotion.net. I have a free, just a free thing, my front page for those of you who want to get started. I've got a fast start that's just type in your like email address, and I've got a free, it's like 35 minutes, and it's just boom, teaches you everything you need to know in After Effects to get started, and it's really, really cool. I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people watch it and just start creating cool prototypes from that. So anyway, I just really cruised through that. So that's what I got. Again, I'm used to speaking about 3 hours on this subject at a minimum, so it's a little hard to squeeze it in, but I appreciate you guys listening to me and being here, and I think I'm just going to wrap that up with this. A call coming in from, it looks like from San Diego.
Thanks, man. That was awesome.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
There's like laughter in the background.
Great. All right, well, give it up for Issara.